Okay, this is the second and last part of the DBQ Essentials, and I wanted to talk about something that's obviously very important to the DBQ, and that's using the documents. This is the last part. As I mentioned, the first part was on thesis, but here it's the same question. Analyze the relative significance of the various causes of the Civil War in the period 1830 to 1860. There's 3 points for the documents, which is almost half of the points, and obviously the documents and evidence that makes up a huge part of the DBQ essay when you write it. The first point is using the content for at least 3 documents to simply address the topic of the prompt. And it must be an accurate description, and you cannot simply quote. Okay, I did see that here and there. Just be very careful. Don't quote. The reader will be looking to see that you know what the document is about. Really, honestly, this point should be automatic for you guys. It's not difficult. You need to get this point. You're identifying the content of the document. Here's an example of correct use of a document's content. The Supreme Court ruled in the 1857 Dred Scott versus Sanford case that blacks are not citizens and are not equal to whites in society. That's from document 7, you may recall. An example of incorrect use of a document's content. Emerson said, quote, "You men of Massachusetts shall kidnap and send back 1,000 miles across the sea to the dog hutch he fled from." And that's document 2. That's incorrect use of a document's content because, as you can see, it's simply a quote. There's no indication that there's understanding of what that means. Using the documents to support an argument. This is a key part of a DBQ. And what you need to do is support an argument in response to the prompt using at least 6 documents. And that's a pretty high bar. As I mentioned here, this point is definitely harder to get, but it's not impossible by any means. You do need to demonstrate how a particular document supports an argument you have made 6 times. But if you get this point, that also shows that you really are very good at developing arguments. Here's an example of correct use or correctly using a document to support an argument. Driven by the popular idea of manifest destiny, the United States gained huge amounts of territory in the 1840s through treaty and conquest. The consequences soon became obvious. Small wars began to rage between Northerners and Southerners in the new territories over questions of the extension of slavery and political power. Failed efforts to solve these questions littered the 1850s on the way to a larger civil war. So assuming there was an idea there, an argument that westward expansion or territorial expansion in general helped lead to the Civil War, then this is a very fine case of using a document to support an argument. An example of incorrectly using a document to support an argument. And normally when this happens, there's not an attempt. Very often there's not even an attempt at an argument, but we get more description. So in this example, nullification was a doctrine that Southerners first put forth in 1832 over the question of tariffs. South Carolina threatened to nullify the federal act on tariffs because they considered it unconstitutional. The problem was resolved when the federal government reduced tariffs. There's nothing incorrect about what they've said, but it is not, most definitely, not an argument. It's purely description. Now to sourcing the last document point. For at least 3 documents, you explain how and why a document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, and/or audience is relevant to an argument. The key to this is going beyond a surface treatment of sourcing, because for at least 3 documents, you must explain how and why the document's, one of those elements, is relevant to an argument. So let's look at the upcoming example. Will help us understand this. Here's an example of correct sourcing of a document. And to show you the incorrect sourcing, I'll use the same document. And this refers to document 2. As a transcendentalist, Emerson believed in individual autonomy and personal freedom, which coincides with abolitionist beliefs. Like many transcendentalists, Emerson was also an abolitionist, and he wrote about refusing to obey the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850. Point of view. So that successful point of view. Here's an example of incorrect sourcing of a document, and you may not have known this, but you do have to remember, to get the point, you have to say how and why, right? It relates to an argument. So simply saying, as a transcendentalist, Emerson would be against the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, attempted point of view. Now, is it good this person remembered that Emerson was a transcendentalist and that would have something to do with his anti-slavery views? Absolutely, but you have to spell out why. And the reason has to do with what a transcendentalist believes in. Thank you for watching.